I will hand it over to Nikki.
Well, hello, everybody. I usually try to start with my camera on, but I've been struggling a lot with Zoom lately. So my name is Nikki Aiden, and I am the North Dakota Rent Help Program Administrator with the Department of Human Services. And I really appreciate everybody taking the time to learn a little bit more about North Dakota Rent Help. And generally, I try not to take too much time when I'm on my slides and leave a lot of time for questions at the end. So hopefully that's all right with you guys. Let's see if I can get my slideshow moving. So I'm just on the struggle bus today. Hang on, crew. All right. So as we kind of start talking on this little bit of time we have, we know that housing is a partnership between renters and housing providers, and both have rights and responsibilities. And housing instability is not good for renters, and it's not good for housing providers. And so North Dakota Rent Help is intended to promote housing stability by shoring up the economic gap that's experienced by many lower income households. So who is eligible for North Dakota Rent Help? Well, they need to be a North Dakota renter household with a verifiable rental agreement for those renting. And we also have kind of a different process for households that may be experiencing homelessness. So that'll look a little different, and we'll go into that. But households, if they're earning up to 80% of area median income, may qualify. If they have experienced a COVID hardship, since March 13th, 2020, when the pandemic began, have they received unemployment benefits? Have they experienced other financial hardships, increased expenses, etc.? Are they at risk of housing instability or homelessness, or are currently homeless, or are at imminent risk of eviction? So we get questions often about what assistance is actually available. And North Dakota Rent Help can pay up to 12 months of rental and utility assistance. That would include past due, current, and future rent and utilities. So it helps sometimes when we are talking about what percent of area median income or state median income is. Sometimes our eligibility guidelines can kind of seem abstract. So it's helpful to convert the monthly or annual salary into an hourly wage. So as a point of reference, 30% of state median income is roughly equivalent to the federal poverty level, which in 2020 was $26,200 for a family of 4. Most federal programs target assistance to households earning 60% of state median income or below, and North Dakota Rent Help targets assistance to households earning 80% of AMI or SMI. So there we go. As kind of a, with this chart, we're kind of looking at a sampling of jobs by average wage. So when we calculate eligibility assistance, we look at total household income by total size, and this helps us understand who may be eligible for assistance. So if you have, a household of 2 and 1 adult. These are the different areas that they may work in. It might be neighbors, friends, relatives. It kind of helps us have a good snapshot about everybody has been impacted by COVID. Many of these occupations would be eligible and sometimes aren't aware. So I also like to discuss a little bit about what does COVID hardship mean? And that can be somewhat abstract as well. So some of the clearer items kind of laid out federally is if they were eligible for unemployment insurance during or since March 13th of 2020, you know, that is considered a COVID hardship. Did they have any loss of income, job loss, layoff, reduced hours, you know, contracts canceled, etc. And then some of the other stuff that gets missed when we discuss COVID hardship sometimes are the extraordinary expenses. Increased childcare costs, increased medical costs, funeral expenses. Sometimes it can be, you know, certain, as we know now, certain bills like grocery bills and other items that actually are related to COVID have been popping up more and more often as an increased expense. You know, some other hardship would be, you know, they've had to take a bunch of time off, you know, to care for children or an ill family member. Or we all know that it's been kind of frequent time off required if we've been exposed to somebody or we need to self-isolate. So, I mean, all of those things count as a COVID hardship. And you'd be surprised more and more how often cost of living increases as they relate to the pandemic have been coming to our program. So when we're talking about housing stability risk, what do we really mean? You know, do they have an eviction notice or a utility disconnection notice? Is there back rent owing or back utilities? Are they currently homeless in an emergency shelter or unsheltered, doubled up, hotel, motel, you know? And then the other portion that sometimes gets missed when we talk about housing instability is housing cost burdened. When we speak of housing cost burden, 39% of North Dakota renters pay more than 30% of their gross income for housing. So what we'd consider to be affordable would be 30% of gross income or less for housing. So when we talk about cost burdened, and we would say, you know, if this household is paying more than the 30% of their gross household income, they are at risk for housing stability because that would be considered more than is affordable. So we have a couple of nice maps we've been able to pull together with some data to kind of demonstrate some of what we're talking about. So, you know, some of the data is from 2019. You know, we don't have anything more current than that on some things, but rental units as part of every housing market, you know, the darker that you go, obviously, the more the rental units are. But on this side, you see the renters who've assisted or who've been assisted through North Dakota Rent Help. And these numbers are through 9/30. We're updating quarterly numbers soon here, but you can kind of see that there's a lot of potential here. There are renters that likely qualify based on 80% of AMI, and that COVID hardship is everywhere and still prevalent. So, you know, we're looking to expand on this and get the word out there and get folks help. So this chart goes over the proportionate share of renter households receiving assistance from NDRH. 39 of 53 counties have at least one participating renter in the program. And then you can see the highest proportionate utilization in several Western counties. or in several Western North Dakota counties over here, and significant opportunity for outreach in rural North Dakota communities.
Nikki, did we want questions as we went along or at the end?
I think it's sometimes easier if we do it at the end because we don't know exactly what I'm going to answer yet.
Okay,
The rest of the slides.
I forgot what we had decided. So, okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's what we decided. Am I right?
I guess I couldn't remember. So that works perfectly fine though.
Okay. So DHS estimates that 48,915 households are potentially eligible for North Dakota rent help. You know, so kind of taking a look at some of our previous slides, you know, the potential for outreach is really great. You know, our goal as a program is to connect with 15%. Oh my goodness, it went away. 15% of all of the renter households that may be eligible. And we think that's a pretty manageable amount. So we'll talk a little bit about how renters can connect with North Dakota Rent Help. We have kind of a brand new fancy website, pretty updated. So they would visit helpishere.nd.gov/renthelp. And then they would select learn more in the application counselor area. Now, this is what we would like to do. We'd like to encourage folks to visit the approved application counseling list. And those folks work with us hand in hand to get applications entered. So the other option is that they can apply online by visiting helpishere.nd.gov and select apply now and enter the application portal. Then they can click I'm a renter and start a new application. So if they are a renter and they're currently in a lease, they would select no, I'm not currently experiencing homelessness right here. Then they follow the instructions to complete the application. And once it's submitted, the renter can return anytime and see the status of the application. So I put a couple tests together so that I can demonstrate this application, for instance, is ready to be reviewed. And this one has payment approved. And this is the date that the funds were sent. So, and that's just the sampling. There's other statuses as well. But a renter can now log back in anytime and see where their application's at in the process. So for households that are experiencing homelessness, and we're working really hard on this process, and we've had a lot of headway with this, but right now we're asking them, of course, to visit our website. And these folks really should connect with an approved application counselor. There is a listing on our website of every agency that's working with us, but they can really help the households experiencing homelessness and guide them through the process. We've minimized many of the documentation requirements for those households with the awareness that it can be extremely difficult to get documents. So if they apply online, they can select I'm a renter and start a new application, and then click yes, I'm currently experiencing homelessness. Then they complete their application and they can log back anytime to view the status of their application, just like those who are in a lease. So what we've been able to do for the households who are experiencing homelessness is once we've approved the household, we send out a letter of commitment and we refer them to an approved North Dakota Rent Help housing facilitator. And the housing facilitators assist the household in obtaining an affordable living situation. And they use that letter of commitment and they visit with landlords. They help the landlords understand what that letter of commitment means. And this is kind of an example of what it looks like. We modified it a little bit, but It basically says, has some charts about, how high rent should be in relation to how many household members, and it just lets the housing provider know that they're approved for the program. We'll pay the application fees, we'll pay the deposit, and rent for up to 12 months. So how housing providers would connect to rent help: if you're a new housing provider only, you would go ahead and create a vendor account with North Dakota OMB's vendor registry. The link and the quick guide to do that are located on the ND Rent Help webpage. So you should be able to find that. And this is just a kind of a quick chart of the North Dakota housing providers that are participating. So the next step would be for new and existing providers to make sure your renters are aware they may qualify. Provide them with a link to apply if that's going to be on websites or out in email, put flyers up. Make sure they have a copy of their lease, and if they have a rent ledger showing what's owing, that really, really helps us to get payment through more accurately and quickly. In the new system, if you don't already have an account as a housing provider, you would create the account in the new platform. There is a user guide available in the housing provider area of the North Dakota Rent Help website. If you click on that, it'll kind of walk you through the process of both establishing a company profile where you can break out properties and companies, and then instructions on how to request funds, connect up with your renters. And if you have a renter that's behind on rent and they haven't initiated an application, you can actually create one on behalf of them here. Housing providers can also log in and check the status of each applicant. So, here you can see these are in draft. And again, I made up some test cases, but it would be the same if it was ready to review or if payment had been issued. We hope that will help a lot with getting the information to the housing providers a lot quicker, making it readily available. So, as I promised, we're at the end. That was pretty quick. And now I am here for the duration and any questions.
We have several.
Yep, I anticipated.
I think some you've already answered, but I'll ask them anyways.
Yeah.
Do you help with deposits?
Yes, we do. The letter of commitment is the primary source of that deposit help. If a household is transferring apartments because there is some unsafe or unstable living environment, we can arrange to pay the deposit for the next place. But if folks are just kind of wanting to move, for an upgrade or whatever the case may be, that we wouldn't necessarily cover. We're looking to cover items where their home is unstable and they need our assistance to move.
Okay. Next one. Is this Rent Bridge?
No, so Rent Bridge, although it was administered by this team that currently administers North Dakota Rent Help, Rent Bridge was the 2020 program, and that was funded by CARES Act money. It wasn't required that the state use dollars to set up a rental assistance program, but that's how DHS decided to use portions of CARES funding to set up a rental assistance program. The requirements were different in 2020 under the Rent Bridge program. The North Dakota Rent Help program is federal funds directly for COVID impacted renters.
Okay. This next one's kind of a two-part, if not three-part question.
Sure.
We currently have some tenants where their electric has been reverted to owner for non-payment. And what we typically do is put that onto their balance with us and they are to pay us. How would we enter this on the North Dakota Rent Help application portal?
Yep, and we would encourage that to be entered as part of the past due rent amount. What we try to do is, that's why we ask for the ledgers so often, is because we can mark that as a utility payment on the backside, but we just need to know how much of it is a utility payment. So if we can get ledgers, you can just enter it as part of your back due amounts and we will get it sorted out.
Okay, and the second part of that question. Or I have a trailer home that we received the bill for water, sewer, garbage, and the tenant is responsible. So it is added onto their account. Again, how do we submit that on the housing provider application?
Yep, just enter it as back due rent, upload a ledger that outlines the actual rent charge, the actual water charge, and we will get that sorted out on our end.
Were the numbers showing how many are getting help from people who have applied themselves? As I know, Pembina County has more than 4.
More than 4 renters who've applied themselves? I guess I'm not clear. Can you read it again?
Were the numbers showing how many that are getting help from people who have applied themselves? As I know, Pembina County has more than 4.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what information we're looking to gather there. If someone wants to type a clarification or if somebody wants to let me know what that's, I might be misunderstanding.
Okay. Whoever asked that question, if you want to clarify in the chat box and I can relay that, that'd be great. How many application counselors are in North Dakota?
Actual application counselors, that changes quite often, actually. There's agencies hire and fire and such, but if you're speaking purely of the agencies, I believe we're at I think we're at 16 separate offices, maybe 17. So the amount of people that are doing it, though, I'm not sure. We could gather that if we needed to, though.
Okay. You just keep coming in. So
Keep going, yeah.
Lots of questions. How far back do you pay for past rent or utilities? If someone has a bill with the housing authority, does that count as well as back rent?
Right. So we look at back rent a couple of ways. First, if, for instance, there is past due rent at a housing provider or past due utilities at an old utility bill that is preventing someone from obtaining housing, it doesn't matter as much when that occurred. We consider that to be a housing stability payment. And so we stabilize their rental history, and then we assist them to get a new place and then pay up to 12 months of that. If you're talking about they're currently living in the home, they're past due a certain amount, they're in a lease, what we do is go back to March 13th, 2020.
Okay, and then there was a follow-up with that Pembina County one.
Yeah.
They said the map showed 4 households receiving help in Pembina County. I have had more than 4 approved. So where did those numbers come from on the map you had that showed numbers of households approved?
Right. That's, like I mentioned, those numbers are good through 9/30, I believe. And we're going to be compiling third quarter data soon here. So
how do you determine how long a household will receive rent and or utility assistance?
So the totality is 12 months. So if we've paid, 2 months of back rent, they have, the current month and the future months, so they'd have 10 remaining. So if we've paid 6 months of back rent, they'd only have 6 remaining for future payments.
Can a past tenant receive help to pay a balance due to a previous landlord?
Yeah, if a rent is approved and they owe balance to a previous landlord, and that needs to be cleared up to obtain housing, we will pay that.
Do you know if there are any programs for those with mortgage payments or possibly lot rent for those that pay those for mobile homes?
So lot rent we do pay through the ND Rent Help program. If it is a rental property and a lease is part of the arrangement, even if it's informal, North Dakota Rent Help can help with that. The mortgage assistance or homeowner assistance program is we are hoping to have something up before the end of the year. So we anticipate that, but I don't have a solid date to give.
If they are being helped by one of the agencies, how can the person check the status of their applications?
Well, we would rely on the actual application counselors to check the status, since they're helping them with the application. So then the application counselor should be able to log in and check their status for them.
I just had a call from a landlord who can't figure out how to register, and I was told not to help them do that. I referred him to the number ending in 1907. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's not that the housing providers, we don't want folks to talk with them. It's that the process to register with the Office of Management and Budget is not the easiest in the world. It can be done, but it can also be confusing. And so our staff up at the ND Rent Help, I have a whole set of staff, 4 folks that work just with the housing providers to walk them through the process, make sure they have the right COVID codes so that they're, connected with our program. So, I don't want to discourage anybody from talking with housing providers or having the conversations with them, but for the bare bones registration piece, it's just easier for everybody if they connect up with my team. So the 1907 number, 328-1907, is the call center. And then call center can let the housing provider team know this person needs to be called back, this landlord.
Okay. Can you provide a list of the items needed when someone applies, such as pay stubs, tax returns, etc.?
Absolutely. I just approved some very beautiful looking checklist documents yesterday, and I would love to send them out. I can send them to Cheryl or whoever to distribute if you'd like.
Yep, we can get those out.
Awesome.
If we have clients that applied in the old system, when will we know to recertify them and if they receive December payment assistance?
So just yesterday, the new system, the ServiceNow system, sent out the recertifications for everybody that is due for the December payments. It is later than we anticipated. We're still working a bit with the tech company, but we are staffed up to work through those as quick as possible. So if you have a renter you're helping and they need to recertify this month, that email should have been sent to either the application counselor or the applicant themselves yesterday, just depending on what email address is in the application.
Is there a FAQ coming soon?
There is. I was just working on it this morning. I anticipate it's going to be probably another solid week and a half before I think we've fleshed it all out, but it is on the way. It'll be posted on the website too.
Are you able to help a client that has past due rent in another state?
Well, we actually sat down about that because at first we were thinking we could not do that. But after some further discussion and some policy decisions that other states are using, we've now decided that a past rental debt is a past rental debt if it is preventing a new home. So yes, we will pay past due rent in another state.
Will you help with deposit for a new applicant as well in an affordable or HUD property?
If the applicant needs to move to either they need they're experiencing homelessness and they need a home, or if they're moving from an unsafe or unstable environment to another, yes, we will pay the deposit.
Clients who are approved are still receiving disconnect notice from utility companies. How can we go about that if North Dakota Rent Help was already informed?
So we actually identified kind of some miscommunication with a couple of the larger companies. The address that they had asked us to send payment to was the wrong one. So we did square that away. So payments for a good portion of utilities are now being applied to the renter accounts. Some of the payments we sent, a couple of months ago, and the company just now found them. So we're working on squaring that away with them. If they're approved, I would ask that you would check, have you had the renter submit a current billing statement, just not only the shut off, but the billing statement, and make sure that the program gets that. That would be the first thing I would check. If that's been submitted and there isn't any movement forward, you can call the 1907 number. And they need to get a hold of the eligibility supervisor, and she'll work through it.
I have had 2 clients get evicted because it took too long for approval, and the landlord evicted even though I told them they had just qualified. How would you handle the client in that point who is very angry and literally getting kicked out by the law?
Yep. And a lot of times, and I've unfortunately had to have the conversation more than a few times, but we can only approve at the speed in which we have all the documentation. So historically throughout the program, evictions have occurred because documents that really needed to be there weren't. And despite multiple requests, we didn't get a hold of them. They weren't sent to us. Sometimes people let us know they have an eviction tomorrow, and we didn't know there was an eviction at all. So there's some miscommunication there a lot of times. So It just depends on the situation. Is it something that the renter didn't produce paperwork, or, you know, the conversation you need to have that with them is sometimes dependent on what the circumstance was.
If, excuse me, if we previously were registered for the rent bridge as a supplier vendor, do we need a new supplier vendor account? Also, are there any guidelines about lease renewals for participants? Are we able to not non-renew if they have received payments?
Right. So, no, you do not need a new supplier account. Thank you for asking that, because some folks have, you know, we maybe didn't message that the best in the beginning. So now we're getting the word out there. You do not need to register for a new supplier account if you have received any payments from the rental assistance program, either ERB or ND Rent Help. You're already in our group of participating housing providers. So regarding lease renewals and stuff, if you're asking, are we restricting lease increases? I think if it was an unreasonable increase or like a large jump in increase, we'd have to just look at it a little harder and maybe speak to the housing provider and see, you know, does the market support this increase, etc. But standard, you know, market increases, we're not going to bark about that or anything. And then non-renewals, I have no place saying whether a housing provider can non-renew or not. That is up to the housing provider, but I would really encourage that provider to make sure that they let us know that they've non-renewed somebody and the lease will be ending at a certain time. We can get that household referred to housing facilitation to help them find a new home, but we can't do any of that if we're not informed.
How do we create accounts in the new system if applicants were approved and receiving assistance in the old portal?
So I actually got this question yesterday too. There was an email sent out from ServiceNow to all of the existing housing providers in our system. And it basically said, you know, we've created a user ID for you because you're already a provider. Here is the link to reset your password or set a password. So after that, the housing provider could see every single renter that they've ever made a request for. So if that email is missing, I would check junk mail for one. If you cannot find it, I encourage you to get a hold of my team, ask for Paige Stark, and she'll sort through it with you.
Is the program still looking for more application counselors?
We don't have any open RFPs at this time. It's something we could consider if there was enough interest, I guess. We haven't really thought about it.
How long does it typically take to get approved?
I could give a better number to that a few weeks ago. Right now, I'm not, if we have everything in the file, when we touch it, it can be less than a week. The thing that takes longer is if not everything has been submitted. Now, I will preface that with saying we had a 3-week kind of pause on processing to switch to the new system. So, you know, we are fighting with that a little bit right now, but that is like a one-off situation, and we're sorting through that right now.
Okay, with the utility question, if I have already been paid for the rent, would I then go back in and initiate a request?
For utilities? So someone's received rental assistance and now they need utility assistance? Is that what you're asking? So if that's the case, we are working on kind of a circumstance in which their utility assistance can be entered on the same application if one's already been approved. For now, I would encourage you to email the request to our group mail, which is dhserb@nd.gov. dhserb@nd.gov.
Let's see. I am an AC and have recently been receiving quite a few emails from ND Rent IT with ERB numbers for applicants that I have not submitted applications for, requesting documents or stating application is incomplete. Is this just an error on IT part?
Well, yeah, it's not NDIT. It's the ServiceNow platform, which looks very similar, but the only emails you'd be getting would be an application in which your email address has associated at some point in time. So it got entered somewhere along the line. Is it possible these folks are old applicants, maybe from quite a while ago when we first started, and that's the situation? If you really truly feel like you have gotten some emails in error, these are not folks you helped apply, please screenshot those emails and send them to Sarah Zink on my team, and we will sort through them. But I haven't experienced that yet, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on there.
What percent of AMI will qualify the renter for the full amount of rent? Also, the chart you showed broke it down to 30, 50, and 80% of AMI. What bearing does that have on the amount of rent paid?
None. The chart I showed was kind of a demonstration or a way to look at area median income. Like I mentioned, many of the assistance programs, other economic assistance programs in the state, nationally, can assist households that make up to 60%. And so that chart was meant to demonstrate that there's a significant amount of earning potential between 60 and 80. And at that 80%, North Dakota Rent Help renters would still qualify, 80% or under of AMI. So it's more of a demonstration. So how the amount of rent paid works is standardized. It is the same for every single applicant. 6 months, the first 6 months are paid in full. Rent is paid in full. Months, it's tiered down after that to make sure that we try to address a benefits cliff and kind of prevent that. But 7, 8, and 9 are at, I believe, 80%, 85%. We're paying 85% of the total rent. And then the months above, so 10, 11, 12, would be 70%. So it's kind of tiered down and it's standard. So it's not a percentage of income or a percentage of the rent. It's standard across the board.
Is this system totally up and running?
No, unfortunately, I have to say we're still working on a couple of defects and some improvements that need to be made to make life a little easier for mostly housing providers. We're really working hard on getting any little defects and miscommunications there squared away. I know we're working a little bit. I think we're still working on some stuff to help application counselors. And then there's just some tweaks on the renter side, but I think that's going to be kind of ongoing for a little while. Just little tweaks and fixes going on. So it's functioning and we can make payments out of it. It's just, you might see things improved or go a little more smoothly as the weeks progress, and we kind of hunt and peck out any little issues.
Does how fast an application getting approved mostly depend on how quickly, efficiently the resident can provide necessary documents?
That is the primary reason why an application gets held up, is insufficient information. So like, for instance, we saw a lot of influx in self-attestations, but what the program's looking for is if you've self-attested rather than uploaded a document, that there's a reasonable explanation why you couldn't get the document to upload. So we've seen a lot of folks doing the self-attestation and not having a reason at all sometimes, or like very little explanation as to why they couldn't get their last paycheck or whatever. So sometimes that's the holdup too. We just need case files to have some continuity and be able to show why decisions were made for approval.
What determines if they get help with both rent and utilities? Is that a limit of dollar amount paid based on the household size or income?
No, rent help and utility help. There's not a limit beyond, we can only pay 12 months. The utility help, we are not tiering that down. That is going to be the full amount of utilities. There's not a percentage paid towards the utilities or the rent. So utilities are paid in full and rent's paid in full for 6 months, and then it tiers down after that.
How or can North Dakota Rent help with a sublease situation?
From my understanding, the ERAP funding does not allow for subleases. So from my perspective, my program wouldn't necessarily be approving a sublease situation.
I haven't received any recertification emails in the old system. I was using my email address. What should I do?
There are about 240, I think was the number this morning, of recertification emails that still needed to be sent today or tomorrow. I asked the tech company to let me know when they'd be sent out, but there are still some remaining that haven't been sent. So if you haven't gotten them, in the next couple of days, let me know and I will circle back with it.
I did not receive notice for December payments issued. Do I have to set up new accounts for people in the old system?
Well, I think the question would be, are they waiting for recertifications? Because if we have to work through this recertification piece, we wouldn't have paid December's rent yet. We're asking housing providers to be a little patient with us while we work through this first set of recertifications in the new system. So unless they've met their maximum benefit, I would anticipate what you're waiting for is the recertification emails. So instead of creating like new applications, which would probably slow stuff down, let's just make sure that we look for those recertification emails in the next couple of days and let me know if they don't show up.
Okay, that pretty much answered this next question. How long should we wait for the recertification email?
Yeah, not long. But I'm actually going to follow up with them when we're done on the call here, and I will continue to do so for the next couple of days because they need to be sent out. So you guys are right about that.
We have an applicant in an urgent situation and we cannot get the system to accept the app. She lives in East Fairview, North Dakota. However, because she is literally feet from the Montana line, her address is North Dakota, but with a Montana zip code. As soon as we enter her address, the system kicks it back as ineligible. How do we get around this to get her info submitted?
Ooh, that's a challenging one.
And in parentheses, it said town straddles border, half in North Dakota and half in Montana.
Oh, this is fun. This is a good problem solving one. If whoever has that one, will you please email me the application number and applicant and the address, and I will see if I can sort through that.
If someone provides an ERB number, is that in an approved application? Meaning, will we be receiving payment, or do they still need to follow up with the application?
So I'm assuming this is a housing provider. If they've provided an ERB number, are they approved? No, not necessarily. If they provide you an ERB number or an application number, it means they've applied. It means we're taking a look at it. And there are very few denials that come out of the program because most folks have really been impacted by COVID. But the approval piece, or, you know, this renter has been approved to receive assistance, that email will go directly to the housing provider, and the housing provider will also get one when payment's been issued.
What if a person is trying to move out of a nursing home and has past due rent that is preventing them from moving into their own home?
If the past due rent is with a housing provider or at a collection agency, that's, you know, where we can demonstrate, you know, that, you know, ABC housing provider is owed this amount, we can help clear that up. And that person could get some housing facilitation assistance to find a new home. But if we're talking about like a past due amount to the nursing home, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Is there a limit on what you could pay on past due rent? Or past due debt, sorry.
Past due debt. When the dollar amounts or it's excessive and there's a pattern of looks like the household really struggles to maneuver through rental and utility, and there's a history, multiple housing providers, multiple utility bills that aren't paid. What we are going to do is be requiring a referral to housing facilitation, not necessarily to find them a new home, but because there are options that housing facilitators have in terms of education and budget counseling and different things that those facilitators can refer to. And we're going to be requiring that those services be utilized if we're going to be paying a large amount or a big, you know, more than a couple of past due landlords. So there's not a dollar limit, I guess. It's more like, what can we do to help this family or household set themselves up for a more stable future?
A landlord is not renewing a lease for a client. They can't come up with a deposit for a new place. Would this situation qualify for deposit help?
Yes, it would.
Sorry if this has already been covered, but how does one become an application counselor? Is this a government position, or can a housing case manager become eligible to offer this service?
Yeah, it was covered. The application counseling agencies that are listed, they responded to RFP the state issued earlier this year. We may be able to open up, you know, a few more spots, but we haven't really talked about that or considered that. And that's something where whatever agency is interested in providing application counseling services, their, agency lead would then respond to that RFP and go through the whole process with the state.
Is there a printable form of the ND rent help application on the website or somewhere?
Nope. We do everything electronic.
It says, I will re-ask. The documentation was all sent during the application. The client finally got approved, but a court date had already been in place for eviction and was evicted. How do I handle the angry tenant other than saying the North Dakota Rent Help follows them to a new place? And in that circumstance, would North Dakota Rent Help pay the deposit?
Yep, North Dakota Rent Help will pay the deposit, and just how you kind of said it right there is, good enough. The approval will follow them to a new place, and because they are evicted, that qualifies them to receive deposit. And in fact, this person probably would need a letter of commitment. And I'm guessing who's asking this probably knows how to ask for that letter of commitment from the team. But we can let Sarah know. Sarah doesn't issue them, but she can get the message to somebody who does. Sarah's Inc.
Is there a way to check the status of a residence file for the landlord? That way we can see what step they are in the process. Have had some residents say they have applied and got far enough to get the ERB number, then stop submitting documents, but tells is they have applied, but tells them they've applied and are waiting to hear back, I think is what they were supposed to say.
Yeah, see, it's hard to, some of these are hard to answer because I'm guessing the context. So if this is an application counselor and you're wanting to help the housing provider know what's going on, you can see, obviously you've helped that person, so logging into your own application counseling account will help them. You can tell the status of what's going on from there. If this is some other, like not an application counselor, if it's a housing provider, I guess I'm not clear about the context there. So I don't know if anybody wants to jump in and clarify what that means, but.
What do we do if the apartment building gets sold and a tenant is receiving assistance?
So if you are the person, the management company that is part of selling it, let us know and let us know who the company is supposed to be. You can call that 1907 number. We'll talk with them and help them get registered or get the renter payments moved over. So that's the best method to do that. If you're the management company or the owner that's buying the property, the same can be said there as well. Call up and let us know we've bought the property or we're managing the property now, and then we'll get you walked through the process. So it's more about communicating with us, calling the 1907 number, and they will get you to the housing provider team.
When are applications in the new system going to start being approved?
We had our first round of approval and payment last week. So it's going on now. Everyone should start seeing determinations being made.
What is the turnaround time for the landlords to get the funds from rent help?
Yeah, that ties right back to that application, applicant piece. How long is it taking the applicant to get information to us? How many times have we had to re-request information? Sometimes the housing providers aren't getting back to us with stuff either. So it's kind of dependent on everybody working together. If we have everything that we need, we will get, and an applicant's approved. That can happen, the approval and the payment within 7 days. But that is a big if, because that very rarely do we get everything at one shot. This might get better though, because the new systems kind of walks through a lot of stuff. So as we work through the new system, hopefully there will be less and less applications that need more information.
Just to let Nikki and everybody know, we are at 2:30. There are about 10 questions left. Nikki, I don't want to keep you unless you're able to answer these. What we can do is I can email these to Nikki and then she can answer them and we can get them back out to the group. So whatever you would like to do, Nikki.
Yep, I'm okay with whatever. I'll let you make the call. I can answer questions or you can email them to me.
There's a couple here that might be crucial.
Okay, all right.
Let's see. I lost my spot. Are you able to help with water bills?
Yep, when we speak of utilities, we're talking about heat, electric, water, wastewater, garbage, the whole gambit.
I've been getting emails with the number and telling the housing provider to request payment within 16 days. That to me says they are approved. Now I'm questioning that thinking. Can you clarify why the landlords are getting that email? And then in parentheses, it says, I have landlords that do not have email or computers.
So one of the kind of major changes in the new system is that we require the landlord, the housing provider, to connect with the renter's application at the front end. We actually can't move that renter forward unless the housing provider does their part. Previously, it would happen at the back end. So we would get through an approval situation and then the housing provider would be contacted to, request payment or whatever. And essentially it causes bottlenecks either at the front or the back. So most landlords get that done pretty quick. Some landlords take a little longer. But right now we need them to take that action at the front end. The minute that an applicant or an application counselor hits submit, the landlord gets an email. Whichever landlord email that an applicant put in, that email address gets an email that says, your applicant, your renter at this address has applied for rent help. Please go and submit a request.
All right. Well, there's still about 9 questions left. So I think we'll wrap it up for now.
Okay.
And then I will email these questions to Nikki. And then once she responds, we can get it mailed out to the group. There was one quick, can you provide your email address for the North Dakota, Montana question, or do you want me to send it to the DHS ERB email?
Yeah, I can, sure. I'll just send it. And whoever it is that needs to have it can have it. Most of the time you're going to get quicker answers from my helpline because my email is pretty full constantly. So it takes me a while to get back sometimes, but I'll be looking out for this one. What's the best way for me to get this to you?
Nikki, this is Cheryl. I can go ahead and send it to her.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So, okay, well, a couple more questions came in, so I'll get those added and then I will get that emailed to you, Nikki. And then whenever you have time, just get them answered and then we'll get it out to the group.
Sounds good.
So thank you guys all for attending today's session. I learned a lot, so I hope you guys did too. And next week, our presentation is dealing with difficult people and or tenants. So hopefully you guys can all join us for that session. And then we will wrap up our training on December 14th with personal preparedness. So thanks again for attending today. And again, please send any feedback, questions, topics from the survey that Marilyn sent out. So hope you all have a good rest of the day. And thank you, Nikki, for presenting.
Yes, thank you. Can you send out, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Ted. I'm at the Fargo Housing property manager at New Horizon. Could you send out a link or an email to us for next week's?
Yes, that'll come Monday morning. If you're
Okay.
registered, that'll come Monday morning from Marilyn.
Okay.
Ted, are you
Awesome.
registered for the series?
Say that again.
Are you registered for the series?
I don't think I am. But I got it from Jill Elliott, our head director, sends it out to all of us. And so she'll probably do it again next week.
If you don't receive it by Monday afternoon, because Marilyn will send it out Monday morning, go ahead and
Okay.
this, and we'll get you the link sent out.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
Yep. Bye.